The next technique we're going to learn is how to make a scrape on the skin. So this is a great effect for if someone were to have fallen down and they were to scrape against concrete. It's very quick and easy to do. There are two different ways that you can do it. But what we're going to be using consistently is this black stipple sponge. So this black stipple sponge, you can cut, and you can cut it in whatever shape you want, whatever feels comfortable for you to work in. I like my stipple sponges to be a bit smaller versus larger, so I just give them a good cut and then I use half of it at a time. This also, again, saves you product and saves you from wasting an entire sponge every time that you're working. Now the first method I'm going to show you is going to use what is called scab blood. So scab blood is a blood that has been thickened to make it very thick and very kind of gel-like. Easy way to do this is you take scab blood on your palette, you take your stipple sponge, and you get a nice even application of color here. Now because we have a heavy, thick product that we're working in, imagine he fell and he got scraped at the same point as he was getting there. With a light touch, you can just slide it down there like that. That will give the illusion of a scrape that had happened, where there is a little bit of a blood coming through. It's a very fast way. You can just add a little bit of detail and a little something extra to the look so it does not look too flat and one-dimensional. Now the next way we can do this is adding a little bit more 3D effects to it than what the actual scab blood gives. So we're going to be using a product called liquid latex. Liquid latex comes in many forms and many colors, from uncolored all the way up to flesh tone colors. It's your choice. You'll find your preference when you get used to it, what you would like to use. This is, of course, it's latex. It's a high allergy alert, so we've already checked with him. We know that he does not have a latex allergy. Sometimes it's good to do a double check just for extra safety. Now, I poured liquid latex into a little cup like this, and I'm going to work out of this little cup. I'm using the same sponge, but the other side of it for this one. Same idea, we pick up a little bit of the product. We don't want a heavy saturation, just a bit in there. And we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to give a little bit of a scrape down on the bone up here. I'm going to do the highest because that's where it would have hit hardest, is the bone area, and then slightly fade down. Now liquid latex dries fairly quickly. The thicker the product is, the longer it will take to dry. Is a good unit of measure to keep a mini hairdryer in your kit and access to an outlet where you're working. You can hold a hairdryer on there and speed up the drying process. That way you're able to work a bit faster when you're working with latex. Okay, once you know that your latex is dry, the way you will know this is by looking at it visually. So when the latex is in its wet form, it is much darker. When the latex is in its wet form, it is much lighter in color, versus when it dries, you can barely even see it. You will see a shine to the skin, and you will see and feel visually and texturally where it is, but it does dry down. It does not stay this depth here. So once it becomes more translucent, you know it's dry and ready to go. From here, what you can do is you can paint in between and add highlight and shadow if you want to, or you can take your finger, because this is a thin layer of latex, and you can just lightly pull down. Now be gentle with this. Latex will grab onto any hair that is on the body at all, and it will pull it slightly. So when you're doing this, go in the direction of where the hair is growing versus going against the grain of the hair. Doing this light pull technique will give a little bit of inconsistency to the edge and also to the latex itself, and create almost an invisible texture onto the skin. This is also a great way to do a very quick burn makeup. If you're looking to make someone look like they have a light burn, you can do a layer of latex and then just slightly open it up with your hand to make it have a bit more texture, and it will move very well with the skin. So from here, once you've opened this up a bit, you can simply add a little bit of blood, or you can go in and you can really spend time coloring it with your alcohol activated makeup or your cream makeup, whichever you prefer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my alcohol activated makeup just to give a slight layer on top of it. I don't want to do too much to detract away from the texture that's there, but I will be adding a bit in some blood tone. And again, it's inconsistent. We're not looking for something that looks 100% full color everywhere. The more inconsistent, the better, to give you a more natural appearance. So you'll see I'm using a tapping motion with the brush as opposed to really blending and doing a full paint on top. You can also use your finger to help blend things out. Even though you're going inconsistently with where the brush is going and you know you're not trying to do a big area, still know why you're putting your brush where you're putting it. You don't want to just close your eyes and go in. There should still be some control and some thought process behind where you're placing the color. Now, aside from a bit of a blood tone, I'm also going to add a little bit of a yellow tone, just to make the area look slightly swollen, because this area is meant to look a little bit more intense of a scrape than this easy, quick kind of cheat scrape that we did down there. Now that we have a couple tones added in there, I'm going to go back with our stipple sponge and our scab blood. Same method as before, we're just picking a bit of it up. And now, using a similar technique to before, we're giving the illusion of a scrape down. And this is, instead of doing one swift movement, because we have latex that we're already working with here, and there's already a bit of 3D element here, we don't want to rip the latex off. We don't want to damage what we just did. So we're working in tiny little pats like this to give the effect, and just to add a little bit of blood in there. You know, it's a scrape. It's not going to be something that's going to be oozing blood all over the place. Think of that. It's not always about dropping blood all over a product, because at the end of the day, not every injury will require that much blood. That's also, again, where your reference photo is going to come in handy. Once we've added our blood, to darken things up a bit, I'm going to take a little bit of a black. Again, like we did on the face, not much. We don't need a lot. We're not looking to have the color black in here. We're using black as a means to give depth. If you think of highlighting and shadowing and contouring, black is going to be a color that's going to make and give things depth and make things recede, whereas light colors are going to pull things more forward. So you can balance what you're doing to make things more 3D. Balancing a dark and a light next to the other will give more of a 3D effect than just one solid tone. Going back in with my brush just very lightly and slightly tapping around in key areas, really on the inside of where some of these scrapes are. I'm just adding a little hint of black. And I'll even pull a little bit down here as well in the same general direction. To give a little bit more dimension to the look, so we don't just have a flat appearance. Now this would be a bit more of a fresh scrape. As you can tell, in comparison to the bruise, this one is more fresh because you see fresh blood, you see bright blood, which always signifies fresh injury. When you're thinking of bloods, a fresh blood that has just been exposed to the oxygen will always be brighter and more red prevalent. Once the blood has been sitting on the oxygen for a while, it turns to a bit more brown and it darkens a bit. So that's how you can also determine the age of things that are including blood. So there you have a couple different ways that you can do scrapes. If you would like to at this point, if you want it to make it look like it's even more fresh, you could take some actual fluid blood and you could drip strategically, little placement where you want the blood to look like it's pouring out of more. Again, you're not going to take blood and start at the top and drip it down the entire path, because then you lose all the detail that you just took time painting through. If you're gonna add a little bit, look through the areas that you created these openings in the latex that have the biggest spot that's wide. Put a little bit of blood in there and slightly pull it down. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, I'll take a little bit of our fresh blood. Make sure you give it a little bit of a shake before you start, because of course it is chemical. These things do settle a bit, so you want to make sure that it is in the proper position. Again, working from our tiny little cups. We're not using a lot, so we don't want to waste too much here. Now when you're using blood, you can use a Q-tip. If you would like, you can also use a brush to apply. I'm using the same brush that we used for the remainder of this, just to get a little bit more precision. And this is a fresh blood that I'm using, just to fill a couple extra areas in. Make it look like some parts were a little bit worse than others. I think maybe he got thrown on the floor during a new fight. He's still healing from his last fight, but now he's in another fight and he got thrown on the floor. He's just in the ringer, this one. One thing to note too is you can't practice enough. When you're working in makeup, especially any creative industry, but especially makeup and things like this, practice is really the essential key to getting the effect that you want out of things. The more you practice, the more you're gonna grow as an artist, and the more experience you're gonna have, and the more confident you're gonna be as well. So practice as much as possible. If you don't have anyone to practice on, that's fine, because you have your own body to use as a palette. Of course, it's always a better method to practice on someone else, so you get the experience of working with an actor or working with another human. However, you can use your arms, you can use your leg, you can use your face. Things like that are better than nothing. So practice as much as you possibly can, and you'll eventually start to see some improvement with your looks. Now you can see how adding a little bit of this liquid blood can give you a little bit better of an idea of some more depth. There's more depth, there's more dimension. That's the whole idea here with everything that we're doing. You never want to just use one flat color. You're balancing everything. So multiple tones and multiple colors to give more of a 3D illusion versus something that's just flat on its own.